Singapore is the only major travel destination in the world where checking the weather forecast before you book your flights is, for practical purposes, a waste of time. This is not an exaggeration. Singapore sits 1 degree and 20 minutes north of the equator, which places it in a climate so consistently warm and humid that the difference between its wettest months and its driest months is not sufficient to meaningfully change the quality of a visit. Every month in Singapore averages between 25 and 32 degrees Celsius. Every month receives meaningful rainfall. No month is dramatically better or worse than any other for outdoor comfort. The traveler who spends an afternoon optimizing their Singapore trip around rainfall averages is solving a problem that doesn't exist, in a place where the standard advice, avoid the monsoon, come in the dry season, simply has no equivalent. What Singapore has instead of a seasonal climate story is a cultural calendar story, and it is a significantly more interesting one. Because Singapore is a city-state built on the deliberate coexistence of 4 major cultural communities: Chinese, Malay, Indian, and a layer of colonial and hybrid cultures running through all 3. Its calendar is layered with events and festivals from traditions that each maintain their own lunar or seasonal cycles, none of which synchronize with each other and none of which move through the Gregorian year in a predictable or repeating pattern. The result is a city where the question of when to visit has a genuine answer, but the answer is not about temperature or rainfall. It's about which version of Singapore you came to find. This is the timing framework that actually works for Singapore, not the climate calendar, but the cultural calendar, and specifically what that calendar offers in each period of the year. The most significant window in Singapore's cultural year opens with Chinese New Year, which falls somewhere between late January and mid-February, depending on the lunar cycle, and the weeks surrounding it represent the city at its most visually and atmospherically transformed. The Chinatown area begins its decorations weeks in advance. Red lanterns along the streets, light installations, a night market that fills the neighborhood with visitors and locals in roughly equal measure. The River Hongbao installations along the Marina Bay waterfront, the light-ups in the Civic District, the tossing of yusheng raw fish salad in restaurants across the city in the days before the New Year. These are not tourist performances. They are the practices of a community celebrating its most significant annual event. And being in Singapore during Chinese New Year as a visitor means being present at something that exists for its residents rather than for you, which is precisely what makes it worth timing around. The first day of Chinese New Year and the day after are when Singapore is most quiet, shops closed, streets emptied as families gather, the city holding its breath before the celebrations resume on the second evening with the street parties and line dances and the River Hongbao fireworks that fill the bay. The best days to be in Singapore for Chinese New Year are the 2 weeks before and the first week after, when the decorations are up, the night markets are operating, and the restaurants are doing their CNY menus. The actual public holiday days are when you can eat steamboat and wander empty streets and experience a version of the city that the ordinary tourist schedule never produces. February and March, after Chinese New Year, is when Thaipusam arrives, one of the most extraordinary public religious events in Southeast Asia, and one that Singapore allows in a form more complete and more visceral than Malaysia or India typically permit in public contexts. Thaipusam is a Hindu festival of devotion in which Tamil devotees carry kavadis, elaborate metal frames attached to the body through piercings on the skin and tongue, as acts of thanksgiving and penance to the god Murugan. The procession moves from Sri Srimavasa Perumal Temple on Serangoon Road through Little India to the Chettiars Temple on Tank Road, a distance of several kilometers walked while bearing the kavadis in a state of devotional trance. The scale of it, the sound of the chanting and the devotional music and the bells, the seriousness and the genuine religious intensity of the participants, and the community of supporters and family members who line the route. This is a cultural experience of a completely different order from any organized tour or heritage walk, and it happens in the streets of Singapore in full public view for anyone who knows to be there. The exact date of Thaipusam varies with the Tamil lunar calendar and falls somewhere in January or February, occasionally overlapping with the Chinese New Year period in years when both fall early. Knowing the specific date in your travel year and building around it is the most reliable way to access the kind of genuinely live cultural experience that Singapore's modern surface makes easy to miss. April and May sit in a quieter cultural period between the major festivals, which makes them paradoxically good months for a different reason. They're when Singapore is most straightforwardly itself, when the city is running at its own pace without the elevated energy of a major festival, and when the hawker centers and the neighborhood streets and the cultural districts operate at their ordinary rhythm rather than their celebratory one. For the traveler who wants to understand the texture of daily Singaporean life, the morning coffee at the Capitium, the aunties doing their market shopping, the uncles playing chess in the void decks of public housing blocks, April and May offer that without the competition for attention that the major festival periods create. This is also the period that precedes Singapore's school holiday season, which begins in late May and runs through June, and which produces a domestic travel surge that fills the city's family-friendly attractions and pushes accommodation prices upward in a way that replicates the crowd dynamics of peak season tourism elsewhere. If the family attractions are your primary interest, Universal Studios on Sentosa, the Singapore Zoo, the Night Safari, the various themed experiences that the tourist industry has built around the city, June is when they're busiest and most expensive, which is either a reason to go then for the energy and the full operation of all facilities, or a reason to go just before or after, for the same attractions at lower prices and lower density. The Hungry Ghost Festival, which falls in the 7th month of the lunar calendar, typically in August or September, sometimes overlapping, is perhaps the most distinctly Singaporean cultural event of the year in the sense that it occupies the city in a way that is impossible to miss if you're there and impossible to understand if you haven't encountered it before. The Ghost Festival is the period when, according to Chinese folk belief, the gates of the underworld open and the spirits of the dead roam the living world. The response is the burning of offerings, paper money, paper houses, paper cars, paper iPhones, in metal bins and on designated burning spots outside nearly every shop house and apartment block in the Chinese neighborhoods. The smoke of these burnings drifts through the streets of Chinatown and Toa Payoh and Badok in the evenings. Temporary stages called gatai appear in vacant lots and car parks across the city, hosting live variety performances, singers, comedians, puppet shows, put on for the benefit of the roaming spirits, with the front rows of seats left deliberately empty and filled with offerings. The gatai stages are open to human spectators in the rows behind the spirit seats, and attending one is the kind of genuinely unexpected urban experience that Singapore's reputation as a sleek, efficient city-state completely fails to prepare you for. The Ghost Festival lasts for the entire lunar 7th month, roughly 4 weeks, and the peak of the offerings and the gatai activity is in the middle 2 weeks. It doesn't require any special access or preparation. You simply walk through the right neighborhoods in the evening, and the evidence is everywhere. But knowing it's happening, and knowing what you're seeing when the smoke rises and the stages appear, is the difference between an atmospheric curiosity and a genuine understanding of one of the oldest surviving folk religious practices in the Chinese diaspora. October and November are when Singapore's Deepavali, the Hindu festival of lights, transforms Little India in a way that rivals the Chinese New Year transformation of Chinatown. The light up along Serangoon Road and the surrounding streets is one of the most visually spectacular seasonal decorations in the city, installed weeks before the actual festival and running for the period around it. The shops along the road fill with flower garlands and sweets and new clothing in the weeks before Deepavali in a way that is the ordinary commerce of a community preparing for its most important annual celebration, and the atmosphere of Little India during this period. The light and the flowers and the smell of incense and the sound of devotional music from the temple is the densest cultural sensory experience the city offers. Deepavali falls in October or November, again determined by the Hindu lunar calendar and varying by year. In years when it falls in late October, it can overlap with the lead-up to the year-end period when Singapore city centre begins its Christmas decorations, and the coexistence of Deepavali light-ups in Little India and Christmas installations along Orchard Road within the same week is one of the more visually striking expressions of Singaporean multiculturalism available, and it's visible to anyone walking between the two neighborhoods. The year-end period, December, is when Singapore is at its most internationally recognizable as a tourist destination. Orchard Road's Christmas light-up, the international visitors who use Singapore as a base for regional travel during Northern Hemisphere winter holidays, the New Year's Eve fireworks over Marina Bay that draw crowds to the waterfront. This is the peak of the tourist season in a city that doesn't have a conventional peak season, and the accommodation prices and crowds at major attractions reflect it. It's not a bad time to visit. The Christmas and New Year atmosphere is genuine and well executed, but it's the period when Singapore is most visibly catering to international expectations rather than operating on its own cultural logic. The honest timing summary for Singapore is simpler and stranger than the timing summary for almost any other destination. Go when the festival you most want to witness falls, check the current year's cultural calendar for the specific dates, and otherwise treat all months as broadly equivalent in terms of climate and basic experience quality. The framework that works everywhere else, optimize for the right season, avoid the wrong weather, simply doesn't apply here in any meaningful way. What Singapore rewards is not the traveler who picked the right month. It's the traveler who picked the right cultural moment within whatever month they could manage. And because the cultural calendar is dense enough that some significant event or festival falls in nearly every month of the year, the traveler who knows to look for that moment will find it regardless of when they arrive, as long as they look for it instead of spending their visit on the surface that the MRT delivers too efficiently and the weather never meaningfully disrupts. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, smash that like button and subscribe to When to Travel. We're all about helping you make smarter travel decisions. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And hey, if you think your friends need this, share it. Comment below with your next destination or your biggest travel question. I'm reading all of them. Let's go.